All right, what's up, everybody? We are going to go over a morning mobility routine. I've gone over this tons of times, but I like to repeat and kind of give you new cues to help you through your mobility practice. So, how is mobility different than flexibility? So, passive motion or passive flexibility is when you can basically pull your arm like this all the way back, and then when you let go, you don't have that range of motion anymore. So, your active range would be you holding it here. Your passive range would be you pulling it as far as you can back. I know it's a really bad example, but you can also say that my passive wrist extension here is when I go like this. My active wrist extension is when I pull back the other way. So I can actually only go like that instead of pulling it all the way back. So you have passive ranges and you have active ranges. FRC, functional range systems, is based on scientific reasoning. We look at functional mobility, articular resilience, and articular health and longevity. And basically what that basically means is that you're looking for articular strength and neurological control. So taking each joint through its full range of motion actively instead of, I guess, getting into a combination of poses or postures to stretch out various different muscles and tendons. Now remember, your muscles aren't going to lengthen. So if your muscles were to lengthen, where would they go? They can't go anywhere. So a lot of people say, I'm really tight, my muscles need to be lengthened. It doesn't really coincide with what science tells us. So in order to gain active mobility or active range of motion, you have to actually find the joint that's causing the biggest issue, and you have to kind of do some work there. So for instance, if I have a really bad right knee, that's going to mess up my right ankle, my right hip, the other side. And so I have to fix that right knee to make my whole better. Otherwise, my whole body's compensating. Compensations aren't a bad thing. They protect us. These are all Dr. Dre quotes and all his facts, but basically you need compensations, right? Otherwise you would falter, you would fall, you'd get even more injured. So we compensate, we get used to those compensations, and then we just think that we can do whatever we want because we're always compensating. So really in functional range conditioning or functional range systems, we're taking each joint through their full range of motion and we're assessing them daily. So if you do this in the morning, as soon as you wake up, you have a good idea of where your body is at for that particular day. So if you wake up, you do some wrist cars or controlled articular rotations, or you do some shoulder or scapular cars, you notice something's off, or if you're practicing mobility or another routine and you just feel the benefits, then you're going to kind of want to reap those benefits and you're going to want to know what you're actually gaining from it. So it's really important to take each joint through its full range of motion and assess it daily. And if you don't do this, you're really not going to know where you stand. And it's really important to do this actively and not just passively. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So if you're kneeling, that's fine. I know that if you have really sensitive knees, or if you don't have good knee flexion, this might not be the best position. So what you can do is you can sit on a block or a pillow right here, or you can do this standing. And you can also just kneel like this and keep your body nice and tight, okay? So I'm gonna do this kneeling. I feel like I can irradiate a little bit more, which we're gonna talk to you about in a little bit, but basically we're gonna start with the neck and work our way down to our toes. Our body is gonna radiate through each joint circle. So each time we do a full circle, we're gonna keep our body completely tight. Now, when we say switch and go to the other side, you can relax in between those repetitions, but during the repetitions, that's when you have to have the most control over yourself. So we're not just whipping through a head and neck stretch, and we're not just whipping through a shoulder circle. So you see people go to the gym all the time. You see people do these arm circles, and it's kind of very uncoordinated. They just kind of whip them around. They go this way, they go that way. there's really no control there. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to take each joint and we're trying to control that joint. And if we don't have control over the joint, then how do we know what the issue is if we have an injury, or what the issue is if we're not able to do something that we want to do? So if we're trying to gain more active range of motion, then you want to actually practice this and improve your joint health, specifically, where the issue lies. So if you have a knee issue, then you need to be working on that knee basically every day until it gets better. So we're going to start with the neck. I'm going to start by kneeling. I'm going to plantar flex here, or you can dorsiflex. Okay, so whatever works best for you. And then we're going to squeeze our fists. We're going to radiate. We're going to inhale, trap the air low, drop the chin, rotate the neck. Ear goes back toward the back of the wall. Chin goes up. Look over the opposite shoulder, all the way down, back to start. One more. One more. Other way. Last one. Good. So I'm not going to talk too much while I go through the actual circle, just because I'm really trying to concentrate. So that was the neck. I've seen some people do their neck like on their stomach or prone. Frank Duffy, I saw do this, where you turn the neck, bring the chin up all the way around to the other side. So I've seen people do it like this. Yeah, you can also do it in a Sphinx pose, where you can just maybe rotate, flex, extend, and then you can do your card from here. Pushing into the ground with the feet and the hands. And then you can also do them on your back and other various positions. So that would be the neck. So now we're going to do the T-spine. Sometimes it's good to hold on to a block, a medicine ball. You can even use a physio ball or exercise ball. But I don't like to use too much equipment, just because, it really doesn't help. It does help with irradiation. It does help with a lot of things, but I do like to go through everything without equipment. And I think it's easier to teach people that, because not everyone has a yoga block or something like that. I mean, you can use certain things in your house. So if you want to add irradiation, really not going over that in this episode, but really just going over the basics. So here's your scapula or your T-spine. I'm going to go sideways to start, and then I'm going to face forward. From here, I'm going to cross my hands across the chest. And then here, just same thing. I'm making a circle with the T-spine. Or the thoracic spine. I'm going to close here, my knees, irradiate nice and tight. Inhale deep. Rotate. Laterally bend. Flex forward. Try just to do the upper back. Rotate to the other side. Laterally bend. And extend. Okay, we're going to rotate the other way. Laterally bend. Round it forward all the way around. Let's go the other way. Other way. Now I'll face you. A question I have for teachers out there that are in FRC is, how much does that upper back go forward, or how much does your head go down? Those are questions I have for you. So if you know the answers, just comment. So I'll do that facing you now, across the chest. Inhale, irradiate. When I say irradiate, it means recruiting all your muscles to create this movement or make this movement possible. So not just willy-nilly, just slowly going around. You're really not going to get any benefit from that. So really trying to recruit and concentrate, control. Cross, inhale, tighten the body. Only move the thoracic spine if possible. So that is active mobility. That is functional mobility. Why? It's because we're moving in that range of motion. Okay, we're not just sitting there and relaxing. All right, so now that was the T-spine. You can also do segmental cat-camel, and then we're also going to talk a little bit about pals and rails in that position while we're here, just to give you a little bit more. So this is your tabletop, your quadruped or whatever, quadrupedal, whatever you want to call it. Hands and knees. Hands are stacked over the shoulders. Knees are stacked over the hips. Feet are in line with the knees and the hands. All 10 fingers pressing into the ground. And you're really extending those toes into the ground too. So you're dorsiflexed. And then from here, I'm going to co-contract the biceps and triceps. That's a Dr. Loco one. Probably just butchered his name, but basically contract the biceps and triceps. And then from here, go into either cat or camel. I'll start in cat. Tuck the chin. That's a posterior pelvic tilt. So you have your posterior pelvic tilt and your anterior pelvic tilt. Okay? So posterior pelvic tilt, pushing into the ground. And then segmentally, from the low spine all the way up the back, I'm going to go in reverse. So I'm going to try to really concentrate and control that. And then retract the scapula as the head and neck come up. And then we'll go the opposite way. Now, if you're trying to do that, have someone assess you. So I'll watch this video. I'll be like, okay, I definitely missed some vertebrae. And then what you can do is, well, it would be too hard to describe. But basically, you can find out what segment of the vertebrae is the issue, and then you can do some pals and rails in that area to maybe try to gain a little bit more space. If you're trying to do pals and rails in this position, if you're in the cat position, push and round, press into the ground, rip the floor apart with your hands and rip the floor apart with your knees. And what you're doing is you're pushing around using your back, and then you're going to do the opposite. You're going to close the hands, pinching the ground together, hands to knees, knees to hands, using the tissue on the opposite side in this position. So that would be your rails. And then if you're in camel, your pals would be squeezing the floor together. Your rails would be pushing the ground away in this position. Okay, so if you don't know what pals and rails are, you'll have to watch a different video for that. So that was our spine or back. Now we're going to get into our scapula. So you can do these standing or kneeling like I'm doing. Go straight out front, about 10 degrees out. And then from here, I'm going to I can hold right here for more radiation. I can go like this for more radiation. I can go like this for more radiation. I can take a dowel. I can get in a half kneeling position like this. I can do the same thing and do all those things. So if you're trying to, increase the irradiation, but I'm just going to do it without. So hand goes out front, out to the side. I'm going to squeeze this fist out in front for this one. Now, a lot of times people are I do this a lot because always looking down at the phone. So I need to focus on retracting my scapula. Otherwise, I'm going to start going like this. So that's our protraction of the scapula, elevation, retraction, depression, and then you continue that circle. You know the 4 muscles in your scapula. Does it even matter? The infraspinatus, supraspinatus, teres minor, and subscapularis. So supra, sub, infra, and teres minor. Your teres major is actually responsible for humeral adduction, where your teres minor controls the muscle actions in the scapula. So a lot going on in there. I'm kind of, notice that I was elevating my whole entire shoulder. I don't have a good scapula, so it's not going to be perfect. Yours probably won't be perfect too in the beginning. That's totally fine. It's good to know. So I'm going to try both at the same time. Now, after a while, yeah, it's going to be tough on your knees, but I'm trying to make my knees a little bit more resilient as well. Good. All right, so now we're going to hit our shoulders. Basically, it's a full circle. Woo, look at that. So basically, it's a full circle. Okay, just like that, but we're going to take you step by step. Other hand is irradiating, so when I'm doing this, you'll notice that you won't be able to see it, but I'm going to be squeezing this fist. You can do this standing or kneeling. Try not to bring your hips back when you go like that. So know where your active range of shoulder flexion is. So when I go like this, my back starts going like that. This is where my active shoulder flexion is. So as soon as your back starts to give out, or as soon as your back starts to arch a little bit, or you start to lean back, that's where you don't have shoulder flexion. So if you're doing overhead squats or you're going all the way back like this, but your true shoulder flexion is like right here, then you can damage you can damage your back because that's what you're loading. So squeezing the fists, chin's retracted because I tend to protract, like I said. Try not to move my hips or anything, and I'm trying not to bring this opposite shoulder forward like this. So obviously I can do a better circle if I open this shoulder forward. If I keep the shoulder back, it's gonna be a lot harder. Okay, that's why you see people hold on to the wall and kind of block everything, make it a lot harder. So shoulder car or controlled articular rotation here, squeezing the fists, shoulder flexion, squeeze the whole body here. So a lot of times people go through this, and I do it all the time. I do my neck, I do my scapula, and then I just kind of lose the intensity. You just kind of like, you start losing it. It's so hard for people to concentrate because we're just focused on our phones. We're focused on, so many distractions. Okay, so you really have to be kind of really in the moment for this to have any benefit for you. So just take that in consideration. So squeezing the fist, squeezing the stomach, keeping everything nice and tight, about 30 to 40%. Not overdoing it either. Not, shaking or squeezing so hard, unless you want to have more control, which is not a bad thing either. So the more control that you get is caused from the contracting of all the muscle fibers. Here we go. Shoulder flexion. Then from here, I'm going to contract my bicep and then turn my bicep forward and internally rotate my shoulder. Pop. And then from here, I'm going to reach back. As I'm reaching back, I'm trying to continue that internal rotation. This is where people get slack. We kind of just, it's easier for us to go like this. So from here, internally rotate. And a lot of times we just pronate. So a lot of people just pronate and then go like this. Your whole bicep has to move. So if your bicep and tricep doesn't move, then you're not actually internally rotating. So that's like the biggest one here. Most people get this wrong. I got it wrong for a super long time. And basically it's because you got such a poor shoulder that you don't even want to do it right because it just doesn't feel good. And so obviously we're going around the pain, but you do want to challenge yourself and your range of motion. Squeezing the fist. Internally rotate. Notice that I started with my hand. I'm trying to start with my bicep. Might not be perfect. Internally rotate as you extend. Keep internally rotating as you adduct. And then from here, extension. And now we're going external rotation, the biceps and triceps and shoulder. Whole shoulder externally rotates as you reach back, forward, and down. Let's do it 2 more times. Shoulder flexion, internal rotation, extension, adduction, extension, external rotation. One last time. Find your full range. All right, I'm going to switch side. Definitely not as controlled as that last one. Recruiting more muscle fibers for more control and more range of motion. Not going into pain, going around the pain. I don't have any pain right now, so I'm pushing it. And I used to have a lot of pain when I did this, when I first started. I had tons of pain. I have absolutely no pain. Now, how would you know if you didn't practice, right? That's a little bit more intense than you probably should do in the morning routine, but sometimes you gotta challenge yourself. So we just did our shoulder cards, we did our scapular cards, we did our T-spine, cat-camel segmentation, we did our head and neck cards. So now we're getting into our elbows and our hands. Elbows are glued next to our rib cage. And what we're gonna do is, what Dana taught us was, pretend there's like this green orb coming off of your hands. And it's just it's just like sprouting up, I guess. So basically, we're going to externally rotate the shoulders. We're going to supinate the hands. Okay. I don't know about the external rotation, but we're definitely going to keep the elbows in right here, supinate the hands. And as we supinate, we're going to flex the elbows. But as we flex the elbows, we're going to keep supinating. So we tend to just flex the elbows kind of passively like this, but we're trying to activate our supination as we go all the way up. And then we're going to actively pronate as we push down. Okay? Supinate, pronate. Now, when I first did these, I did not feel anything. And that's just because I wasn't doing it right and I wasn't really trying that hard. And you're always going to think that you're going to have like a joint that's like going to be perfect and you're not going to feel anything. You're just going to whiz right through it. Now, if that's the case, that means you're probably not trying. %, effort, 30% intensity. Then we're going to reverse it, pronate, flex, extend as you supinate. Pronate, flex, extend as you supinate. Now, I like to do these with my arms teed out. Okay. Notice that I can see myself in the video. Now, that's a good thing. Okay. A lot of people might be like, oh, that's kind of weird. Well, now I can actually see if my shoulders are off. Okay. I can see that they're lined up with that railing right there. So that's good to know. Okay. So I was like that, and I couldn't see myself, you know, that would be important to know. So basically, I know that I have some off shoulders. So I like to do this one. I like to squeeze my fists, squeeze the biceps, triceps, forearms, shoulders, even the scapula muscles. And then I like to externally rotate shoulders. Got this from Dr. Rob Morano. Now we're going to flex the forearms. As we flex, we're going to internally rotate. Flex, internally rotate, flex, internally rotate, flex, internally rotate. Keep going. Keep the elbows straight, but you're trying to kind of squeeze those palms. Keep going. Other way, opposite way. Keep going. Other way. And now we're going to bend. Push forward. Out. Supinate. Externally rotate. Release the hands. Bend the elbows. Pronate, push. And then internally rotate. Externally rotate. Bend. Pronate, push. And relax. Ooh. So there's your elbows. Now we're going to get our wrists. Notice I'm switching from sitting on my ankles to sitting on my heels. That's just giving my ankles a break. At the same time, I'm building resilience in my knees and my ankles this entire time, as opposed to just standing. So here we go with our wrists. Elbows glued next to the side. Extend the wrists. Middle fingers are creating the circle. Okay, so your middle fingers, for me at least, are creating the biggest circle that you can. Extend, middle fingers go in, up, out, and down. You're going to notice that my hands try to stay in front of my elbows this entire time. Okay, so I'm not going like this. I'm not going like this. Hands right out front, in, up, out, and down. So ulnar inversion, wrist flexion. Oh wait, what was that? Ulnar deviation and radial deviation? Yeah. So we have extension of the wrist, ulnar deviation, flexion, and then radial deviation going out and then down. Let's go the other way. Keep those fingers straight. Now, if this is easy, you might not be trying. Jeez. All right, now I'm going to do that with my fist. So I'm going to squeeze my fist, do the same thing. Probably squeezing a little bit too tight. Remember, in your morning routine, when you do this when you first wake up, you're probably only going to have 10 to 30% at most really energy or intensity, and that's fine. Right now it's it's 11. I have a little bit more energy. That's why I'm kind of pushing myself a little bit. So there's your wrists, the wrist circles, hands in front of the elbows, full range here. You can do pals and rails and wrist extension. We talked about that earlier. So basically my passive range of motion is right here, okay, cutting the angle down. Now my active range of motion is right here, okay. So that's my active range. Passive range is right here. Okay, so I'm trying to close that gap. I'm trying to work in these ranges. Okay, if I don't work in these ranges, I'm more likely to get injured in these ranges. And so we're trying to mitigate injury in these end and short ranges. And so that's where we tend to have the least amount of strength in these end and short ranges. And so, for example, if you're squatting and you're going down and your glutes go from your anterior pelvic tilt to your posterior pelvic tilt. From right at that position, that's where you might want to get underneath the Smith machine or rack and try to build in this position until you go into that posterior pelvic tilt. So if you're going down with an anterior pelvic tilt like this, and then it kind of goes in and down, then that's the range that you might need to be working in. So you can do an isometric squat in that area. And so we've seen people do that in chest bench press, where you're on your back, let's just say you're very weak right at the bottom of your push, right? So you're right here and you're super weak. So what do people do? We stack the bench, we put too much weight, we isometrically contract in that range of motion. So that's exactly what FRC is, I think, in the terms of how we're building that resilient tissue. We're looking at those angles. We're looking at the short and long ranges of each joint, and we're measuring the capacity by doing these things daily, instead of maybe tying in a shoulder stretch with, okay, we're going to be assessing the shoulders, let's just say with a stick or a dowel. Well, that's more passive because we're holding on to the stick. Okay, so that's the stick doing some of the work for us. So we're able to do stuff like that, but are we actually measuring our range of motion that we can do without that stick? That's just something that you want to keep in mind. So elbows, hands. Now we're going to get into the hips. You can do these hands and knees. Sometimes I see instructors bring their hand up. You can lean your opposite side of the body into the wall. So I can go out here. I can push into the wall here. And then I can create my hip circles. So now we're getting into the hip. Okay, so that's just one option you can do against the wall. You can also do these side lying. This. Okay. Just like that. It's a little bit, I think, easier because you're not on your hands and wrists. So if you have hands and wrist issues, you can do them on your side. I'm going to do my hands and knees. So the whole body is connected to the ground here. I'm going to flex the hip to the elbow. Then I'm going to try to keep my back flat. So I'm going to look in the camera. I'm going to make sure that my back is flat this whole time. Now, if I go like this, like that, or like this, and I use my back to extend my hip, or use my back to flex my hip, that means I'm using my back to do those things instead of my hip. So if you want a hip, you got to control just the hip and stop using your back when you're trying to control your hip. So you have to kind of isolate the joint in order to maximize that joint. So we're going with that right hip here. Abduct the hip. Internally rotate as you extend. Adduct, flex, abduct, internally rotate, and extend to adduction. So now we're going to go the other way. Hip extension, external rotation, internal, and back. If you want to challenge yourself, you can put a tennis ball on that knee that's bent and doing the motion. Switching side, doing about 2 or 3 on each side. Woo. Hips are always brutal for me. Now we're going to hit the knees. Got bad knees too. I've had knee surgery. I've broken my fibula. So I know what it's like not to have a knee and not to have an entire leg for almost 4 years, I feel like, in my life, where I was actually in pain or I was going through the recovery process. So I know what it's like to have to reconstruct a knee, and the pals and rails with your external and internal rotation. I mean, that's probably like definitely a godsend. So what we're going to do is we're going to wrap our hand around the thigh. We're going to dig this heel into the ground. We're going to dig this heel into the ground to start. I just want to know if I have internal and external rotation of the tibia. You can comment and tell me if I do. Okay, then from here, what I'm going to do is bring that heel off the ground just a little, squeeze that thigh, trying to squeeze this calf or gastroc into my wrist. Externally rotate, squeeze my hands. This is all for the irradiation to recruit more muscle, or recruit more muscle fibers and energy, and then extend the knee, internal, flex, external, extend, in, and down, out, up, in, down, out, up, in, down. Let's go the opposite way, in and up, out, down, in, up, out, down, in, up, out, down. Let's get the other side. You can also do these standing. You can do these side lying as well, these knee cars. You do them on your back. And you can do this with a wall behind your back in case you don't feel comfortable in this position. The goal isn't to challenge your back when you're doing knee cars. So if you ever feel like, oh, this hurts my ankle, and I'm trying to really work, my wrist, then you need to figure out how to change the angle. And I see that a lot. I see a lot of people, they'll do their push-ups, they'll do planks, and then they do their wrist circles unconsciously after. I'm like, you should probably do those before the push-up. All right, now we're going to hit the ankles. Plantar flex. In. We're drawing the circle with the big toe. In and up, out, and down. Again, irradiating. What does that mean? It means not being passive. My whole body is about 30% kind of intense, my intensity here. 100% effort, 30% intensity. And for a lot of people, 100% effort means 100% intensity. That's not true. Switch. Now, I used to have really weak hip flexors doing this, and they've gotten a lot better. You know, how would you know how much control you have over your ankle, your knees, your hips if you didn't purposely find out? And if you're a fitness, person or a health expert, obviously, hopefully you're doing these things. You know your body well enough, whether it's maybe it's not FRC, maybe it's some other method to assess your body, but you need to know these things because your clients, your students, they're going to come up to you and they're going to ask you, how do I fix this? How do I fix that? And if you don't know how to do it, I don't know how you're going to teach them. So especially for phys ed teachers as well, you got your high school athlete, you have your middle school student who, has been playing a lot of video games and their postures are off. Their mobility isn't as good as you think it would be. So kneecaps. So we're going to push these in circles. And we're going to keep. Now this is a time where we're actually not going to radiate the body. We're not going to be squeezing the body at all. We're actually, in order to move your patella, you need to be really relaxed. So what we're doing is, like a clock, we're going to 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 12 o'clock. Okay. Sometimes you feel a little bit of clicking. I mean, wouldn't it be nice to know that you do have clicking there? Or if, let's just say your patella doesn't move at all. You're trying this and you just can't even relax your leg. That's a sign of poor neurological control. It's a sign of maybe a biological issue. And so if you do have issues like, oh, I can't control this at all, can't control this, then you need to see like a functional range release practitioner or, someone, go to functionalanatomyseminars.com and you can find a functional range release practitioner. If you don't have control, they're going to help you gain control. They're not going to just, put some fairy dust on you and say, yeah, let me just crack your back and you're going to be good. No, they're going to assess your back. They're going to tell you, what vertebrae is causing the issue. They're going to tell you, what FRC methods or training styles you need to do to fix it. And then you fix it. And that's kind of basically it. It's not them pushing into you with a massage ball or a lacrosse ball or a Theragun or a foam roller and all these methods that we keep trying to teach our clients. And we're giving everyone all this false hope and information just because it feels good for literally 5 seconds. And then, we're back to where we were. So we know that, foam rolling, it has that slight neurological benefit where you feel like you have more range of motion. But guess what? That means you don't have that range of motion. So why are you pushing yourself in a range of motion that you don't actually have? And if that's to gain unnecessary, records or unnecessary things, but that's just part of your lifestyle, then just go for it. Who cares? If you don't care, I don't care. But if you want to fix something, then you got to fix something. So a lot of people have their goals in mind, what they want to do, what they want to accomplish, but that's really up to you. So feet. So we got our hips, we got our knees. Now we're gonna get our toes. So toes. First, we're gonna start with all 10 toes off the ground. Okay. And I'm going to try to separate my toes while they're off the ground. Now, if you don't have control of your toes or you think this is weird, well, we think you're weird. Okay? Because you need to have control over your toes. Your toes, obviously, are your foundation. I mean, that's what's touching the ground. Those are your tires, right? So here we are trying to separate the toes. I don't have any control in this pinky toe. And I think it's because, obviously your socks, and I have super wide feet. When you wear socks and shoes, they just kind of push everything in like this. And so we're actually trying to counterbalance all that out actively. Now we can passively stretch all this. We can passively put inputs in here, which I think are good if you have no control. That's perfectly fine. But then you have to get to a point where you're able to control your toes. Otherwise, you're going to literally have no connection with the ground. You're going to have you're going to have so many other issues later on in life if you already don't. So yes, you can control them with your hands, manipulate them if they don't actually control themselves, but then you want to do it themselves, let them do the work, separate the toes. Now just the big toe down and all other 8 toes up. Hold, squeeze that big toe down into the ground. And then from here, we're going to switch. Everything but the big toe. You'll notice that this toe goes up higher than this toe, and this toe goes more in than this toe. And this toe goes in more. So this left foot has got some major issues. And I also have some left hip issues. I have left hip flexion issues. So definitely have some left lower limb issues right now. So from here, big toe down, all 8 toes up. Switch. I'll try to go closer. And then from here, all toes separated. And we're going to go down 1 toe at a time from pinky to big toe. Notice that this toe slams into this toe. I don't want that. I want to go straight down. I mean, this one isn't that much better, but we'll go pinky to big toe. Okay, try it again. Okay, now just the big toe down, switch, all 10 toes up, separate. Now from here, just the big toe touches the ground only. We're gonna do 3 taps. 1, 2, 3. So that's just a little bit of toe work. Feet work, toe work, ankle work, super important. I love the combat stance here. You know what it's called? Combat squat. Well, maybe I got it wrong. But basically, dorsiflexion of the ankle, hip flexion, knee flexion, back foot, plantar flexion, knee flexion. Okay, and what I'm doing here is I'm distributing the weight over the knee to get that first initial passive stretch. And then what I do is I start pushing the toes and I start plantar flexing the foot, gas pedaling down into the ground. Some people get an immediate cramp in the calf, okay? And then what we do from here is we pull those toes up toward the shins, and then you can do that back and forth, okay? Your pals and rails. So holding it, stretching it for up to 2 minutes. I'll show you on this side. So holding and stretching up to 2 minutes in your dorsiflexion here. Breathing and holding, diaphragmatic breathing. Inhale 4, exhale 8. And then you begin to push down 0 to 100%. And then pull up in your regressive angle. Okay, so that would be pals and rails for the ankle. And I'm not really going over that too much in detail. Today is just basic mobility. So always recognizing how this feels on your knees passively first, not actively. So just seeing how that feels. Figuring out where your knees are is always a good thing. Okay, so that's going to be it for today. We went over, I think, everything. Neck, scapula, T-spine, segmental cat-cow, glenohumeral. We did some elbow, wrist, hip, knee, patella, ankle, and toes. So I think we hit most everything. Leave me a comment and then let me know what you think, and then pass this mobility class off to your buddies and check out link in the profile. It'll be posted.